Today we continue our series on land conservation in the Gulf states. In part 2, to better our community, we visit Diamondhead, Mississippi, built in a watershed where an emphasis on low impact preserves both land and water quality. We begin by meeting the man who runs Diamondhead.
My name is Michael Riso. I'm the city manager for Diamondhead, Mississippi. I've been in this position for just over 2 years. I'm hired by the city council to manage and administer the city. So all the staff, all the employees of the city, all answer to me. So public works, to the streets, to drainage, that all falls under my responsibility. It's always a challenge. I think based on my experience from previous jobs, I'll be able to bring that knowledge into this workplace to better our community. Diamondhead was formed in 1970, really as a resort community, and it's grown since drastically. It's 12 miles square, we got 82 miles of streets. Diamondhead's really a unique community along the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Primarily, it's a residential community. We don't have industry here. The south port of Diamondhead is located on the Bay of St. Louis. So the bay feeds right into the Gulf of Mexico. So the waters from the Gulf are coming right up to Diamondhead. If I think of probably a major threat to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, obviously we think of hurricanes and the weather, okay, because we've lived it. But to be honest, the water quality is probably one of the biggest things that are threatening the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
One of the things we're starting to experience is areas that are undeveloped now are starting to flood where they didn't flood before.
As climate change occurs, we are actually going to see more and more increased flooding, more and more intensive heat, because hotter air actually holds more moisture. And so what happens is we're going to have more intense storms, increased rainfall, and those kinds of impacts.
When you think of a watershed-based approach to either flood management or water quality, you've got to look upstream. You've got to say, where is the water, where it's starting, and how is it coming down and impacting the people more south of it, let's call it.
Upstream areas are just as important, if not more important, in terms of managing the impacts on our waterways. Everything that people do on their individual properties and where and how things get built impacts the water quantity and what ends up in our waterways downstream.
Instead of reserving one place that's outside an urban area for stormwater and expecting to move all the water there and detain it and retain it there, it's more important to break it down into multiple places, smaller pockets of land inside the urban core that then become the infiltration zones for stormwater to resist. And so land conservation can provide those areas that really make great places for stormwater to be detained very close to where it falls.
I think Hancock County, with the county-wide stormwater, looking at the watershed approach to drainage and water quality, is unique. That is definitely something we could be on the cutting edge and be one of the only counties that have done it in the state. Yeah, when you talk about land conservation, I think it's very important for a variety of reasons. When I think of Diamondhead, I think of some areas that are might be wetlands. So we want to prevent maybe development in that area that is prone to flooding. But it's also an area that's cleaning the water, and it's serving multiple purposes, including for our wildlife and our fisheries. So it's important for us to make sure we're taking care of that. I think all cities ought to be taking a very intentional approach to conservation and green space in general.
I would say the relationship between land conservation and stormwater management is that water has to go somewhere, right? And so one of the best things we can do is preserve and protect areas of land that we shouldn't be building on.
You see properties flooding that never have before. Some of that is seawater rise, global warming, and all of that, but a huge part of that is 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 years worth of development where we didn't understand the need to incorporate conservation methods.
The land that is most suited for conservation are the ones that either shouldn't be developed on because they're in flood areas. They have they provide a lot of ecosystem services. So in terms of being critical habitat and filtering the water, being holding areas for stormwater, so it's going to take pressure off our municipal stormwater systems.
So if you can, let's say, slow the flow and allow you to filter the water and store the water north, then obviously there's going to be less flooding south. In any city, when there's development or potential development, you've got to have regulations. There's got to be a process. We've got to take a very intentional and concentrated effort in making sure when they do come to town that they build right, so that they don't negatively impact their neighbors.
The more conservation methods that we can incorporate into a development as it's being done, the less fixing we have to do later where it impacts another property or even the same property.
In working with Diamondhead over the years in watershed planning, they are really taking an interest and a lead in promoting and looking at low-impact development practices and really seeing the benefit of preserving some of their greenway corridors and buffers on their waterways.
One thing we are trying to do in Diamondhead is to encourage developers to use low-impact development. So we have put things in our building code and our ordinances that give them the freedom to have that choice. If they want to use those techniques, they can. One thing I've learned as city manager is that engineers and drainage projects cost a lot of money. So in my opinion, we want to prevent future problems by developing right from the beginning.
If you can do things that hold water on your site and let it soak into the ground, you keep your trees healthy, you keep your groundwater healthy, you keep all of your community healthy because you're maintaining the hydrology that used to exist. So right down to the individual property at a house level, it's important.
Since the 1990s, we've been talking about clustered development, development that provides greater intensity, maybe smaller lot sizes, maybe increased sort of multifamily kinds of uses in certain areas, but then preserves other areas for nature to provide that same kind of stormwater detention capacity, yes, but other ecosystem services as well.
I think that a lot of people in today's world are looking for outdoor activities, things to enjoy, the beauty of having a park or a green space, or taking your class to go sit up under a tree and have a program.
We'd all like to do it the most economically feasible way, the way that takes care of the land and makes it all a more pleasant place to live, because at the end of the day, that draws people to the community. Incorporating land conservation is a challenge because it's change. Change is always uncomfortable. I think what's important is figuring out how to understand an entire area as a whole, incorporate all the stakeholders, make sure people get a chance to express their concerns.
We have residents that are very much into being more pro-conservation, and we have others who are pro-development. So there's got to be a nice balancing act.
Just incorporating stormwater management plans and ordinances that help manage water and help manage land in an incremental basis is making a big difference in changing the way that land has been developed over the past 50 years, and I think those are hugely important.
My kids and their kids are going to benefit if we make those decisions today. So I think the future's bright. I love Diamondhead. It's a great place to live. I love the people. It's an active community. Whether you're young or old, people are outside having fun, and we just want to make it better.
Always a challenge balancing conservation and development. If you'd like to know more, you can contact the Partnership for Gulf Coast Land Conservation at gulfpartnership.org. It's a coalition of 26 conservation groups that work in the Gulf Coast region.